Imagine for a moment you are the most powerful person in the medieval world. You are the Byzantine Emperor, God's regent on earth, ruling from the glittering city of Constantinople. But your absolute power makes you an absolute target. Brothers blind brothers for your throne, and generals constantly plot to overthrow you. Who would you trust to guard your life? Your own people are tangled in these plots. What you need is a bodyguard of unmatched ferocity, terrifying strength, and, most importantly, loyalty so pure it has to be imported. Welcome to 10-Minute History. I'm your host, Jake Sullivan, and today we're telling the saga of the Varangian Guard, the elite Viking and Anglo-Saxon mercenaries who became the personal, axe-wielding bodyguards of the Byzantine emperors. To understand how this unlikely alliance came to be, we have to look at two very different worlds that were on a collision course. In the far north, the Viking Age was in full fury. Driven by overpopulation, political strife, and a lust for silver, Norsemen exploded out of Scandinavia. Their secret weapon was the longship, a masterpiece of naval engineering that could brave the open ocean and penetrate deep inland via rivers, allowing them to strike without warning. Their warrior culture revered an honorable death in battle, creating fearless fighters who fought in formidable shield walls. Their most iconic weapon was the Dane axe, a massive two-handed battle axe that could split a helmet, a shield, or a skull with a single devastating blow. While Danish and Norwegian Vikings raided west towards England and France, Swedish Vikings, known as Varangians, turned east. They rode their longships down the great rivers of modern-day Russia, creating a trade highway that connected the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea. Their ultimate destination was the richest city on earth, a place they called Miklagard, the great city, Constantinople. Along these rivers, a Scandinavian warrior merchant elite established control over the local Slavic tribes, creating a unique hybrid state known as the Kievan Rus. For decades, the relationship between the Rus and the Byzantine Empire was a cycle of violent raids and tense negotiations. The Rus would attack Constantinople to extort favorable trade deals, and the Byzantines, while defending their city with terrifying weapons like Greek fire, grew to respect the sheer fighting prowess of these northern barbarians. By the mid-10th century, contingents of Rus warriors were already serving as mercenaries in the emperor's armies, valued for their ferocity and, crucially, their total disinterest in Byzantine politics. This brings us to our second world, the Byzantine Empire in the late 10th century. It was an empire of immense wealth and power, the heir to ancient Rome. But its gilded exterior hid a deep instability. There was no clear law of succession, which meant the throne was a prize open to any general with a strong enough army and enough ambition. Emperors were constantly being deposed, blinded, and murdered. The traditional imperial guards, the Tegmata, were drawn from powerful Byzantine families and were often at the heart of the conspiracies they were meant to prevent. An emperor could never be sure if the man guarding his bedroom door was a protector or a paid assassin. What the emperor desperately needed was a bodyguard that was militarily unstoppable and politically alien. He needed warriors with no family ties to his rivals, no stake in the empire's religious disputes, and no ambition beyond serving the man who paid them. The Rus, mercenaries, were the perfect solution to the emperor's deadly problem, and in the year 988 that solution became a permanent institution. The formal birth of the Varangian Guard came during a moment of absolute desperation for one of Byzantium's greatest rulers, Emperor Basil II. In 987, Basil faced a massive civil war. A powerful general named Bardas Phocas had been declared emperor by the army and was marching on Constantinople. Basil's own troops were disloyal, and his reign and his life hung by a thread. In his desperation, Basil sent an embassy north to the ruler of the Kievan Rus, Grand Prince Vladimir the Great. Basil made Vladimir an offer that was, to Byzantine ears, almost unthinkable. He asked for an army of elite Rus warriors. In exchange, he offered not just gold, but the hand of his own sister, Anna, a princess born in the purple, which gave her immense prestige. Never before had a princess of her status been married to a pagan barbarian ruler. For Vladimir, the offer was a political jackpot. Marrying into the imperial family would give his new state incredible legitimacy. He agreed on the condition that Vladimir and his people convert to Orthodox Christianity. In the winter of 988, a fleet of longships carrying 6,000 elite Rus warriors arrived in Constantinople. Basil wasted no time. He unleashed his new army on the rebel camp, and the Rus fell on them with savage fury, tearing the enemy to pieces, as one historian wrote. The war ended at the Battle of Abydos, where the 6,000 Rus formed the core of Basil's army and crushed the rebellion. Basil II's throne was saved. He had found his perfectly loyal, terrifyingly effective soldiers. He decided to keep them in his service permanently as his personal bodyguard. This was the birth of the Tagmaton Varangon, the Varangian Guard. Basil kept his promise, and his sister Anna married Vladimir. Vladimir was baptized, and he began the conversion of the Kievan Rus to Orthodox Christianity, a monumental event that shaped the culture and religion of Russia and Ukraine for the next 1,000 years, all as a direct result of an emperor's need for a bodyguard. From that moment on, the Guard became a permanent institution, and their way of life in Miklagard was one of stark contrasts. Their most vital role was as the emperor's personal protectors. They stood guard at the palace gates, in the imperial chambers, and surrounded the emperor during public appearances, their towering presence and massive axes a constant warning against treason. On the battlefield, they were the emperor's trump card, elite shock troops held in reserve to be unleashed at the most critical moment to shatter the enemy line. They also acted as the emperor's special police force in the city, trusted to arrest high-ranking nobles because they had no local loyalties. This included the grim task of being imperial executioners. In 1042, when the people rose up against the usurper Emperor Michael V, it was the Varangians who, on the orders of the legitimate empresses, dragged him from a monastery and blinded him in the public hippodrome. They were not kingmakers, but they were the brutal enforcers of legitimate power. Of course, this absolute loyalty came at a very high price. Varangians were the best-paid soldiers in the empire, but their most famous reward was a unique custom known as Palutasvarf. This Old Norse term meant palace plundering. The moment an emperor died, the Varangians had the legal right to rush into the imperial treasury and take as much gold, silver, and other portable wealth as they could physically carry. This was not looting, it was a contractual bonus. This single custom is what made service in the Guard so incredibly lucrative and explains the river of Byzantine gold that flowed back to Scandinavia. The most famous Varangian of all is a man who perfectly illustrates this path to riches, Harald Sigurdsson, later known as King Harald Hardrada or Hard Ruler of Norway. As a teenager, Harald was exiled from Norway after his half-brother King Olaf was killed in battle in 1030. Around 1034, he and his followers traveled to Constantinople and joined the Varangian Guard. For the next decade, Harald fought all over the empire, from Sicily to Bulgaria, amassing an enormous personal fortune from his pay and his share of battle loot. His story gets even crazier. He was eventually imprisoned by a new emperor, but made a legendary escape. He and his men were lowered from the prison, stormed the guard post, and commandeered ships in the harbor. When they were blocked by the great chain that protected the port, Harald ordered all his men and heavy cargo to the back of the ship, raising the bow. They rowed full speed at the chain, and at the last second everyone ran to the front. The bow crashed down on the chain, and the ship's momentum carried it right over. Harald returned to Kiev with a treasure so vast that no one in the north had ever seen anything like it. He used this Byzantine gold to fund an army, return to Norway, and seize the throne. His epic life finally ended in 1066, when he invaded England to claim its throne, only to be killed at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. Harald Hardrada's incredible story became the ultimate recruiting poster for the Guard. But the year of his death, 1066, brought a new kind of recruit. After the Norman conquest of England, thousands of high-born Anglo-Saxon warriors lost their lands and titles. Facing subjugation, many of these dispossessed elites chose exile. Remarkably, a huge number of them made the long journey to Constantinople and enlisted in the Varangian Guard. By the early 12th century, the English and Danish element became so prominent that the Guard was often simply called the English. In a bitter twist of fate, these Anglo-Saxon warriors, who had lost their homeland to the Normans at Hastings, now found themselves fighting Normans once again in Byzantine service in Italy and Greece. This forgotten migration created a fascinating New England in the heart of Byzantium. We can still see traces of the Varangians' service today. In Sweden, there are dozens of memorial stones, known as the Greece runestones, carved by families for kinsmen who died in the Greek land. But the most incredible piece of evidence stands in Venice. At the entrance to the Venetian arsenal is a 10-foot-tall marble lion, which was looted from the port of Athens in the 17th century. Carved into the lion's shoulder are long, looping Scandinavian runes. In the 11th century, Varangian mercenaries, likely bored on garrison duty, carved their names and a message onto this ancient Greek statue. It's a piece of graffiti that has lasted 1,000 years, a permanent testament to the far-flung travels of the emperor's axemen. The Guard finally met its end with the empire it served. When the Knights of the Fourth Crusade sacked Constantinople in 1204, the Varangian Guard mounted the only effective resistance, fighting with incredible courage until they were hopelessly outnumbered. Although the Guard was later revived in a smaller form, the weakened empire could no longer afford to recruit elite warriors from the north. The legendary axe-bearers faded into history. The legacy of the Varangian Guard is a powerful reminder of the surprising connections of the medieval world. They were a stabilizing force that prolonged the life of the Byzantine Empire, providing a solution to the emperor's security problem. They were a cultural and economic bridge, funneling Byzantine wealth and ideas to the north, transforming the societies of Scandinavia and the Rus. Their creation even led directly to the Christianization of what would become Russia and Ukraine. The Varangian Guard is a timeless story of loyalty, ambition, and the collision of cultures, a saga of how the fate of an empire and the religion of a civilization rested on the shoulders of axe-bearing barbarians from the far north. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know down in the comments below. If you found this interesting or learned something new, please give this video a like, and don't forget to subscribe to 10-Minute History for more deep dives. Thanks for listening.